Welcome to the TechHub.training Client Confusion Challenge Solution. In this video, I will walk you through this challenge so that we can help our client Alex with managing the finances of her photography business. Now, I'll preface this video by saying that some of the formulas in this challenge can get kind of complex. So I'll do my best to explain them, and hopefully it'll be sufficient and you'll be able to understand what my thought process was as I solved this challenge. So first of all, we are given this client data. The client data is a list of transactions that occurred during the year. Next, we receive the chart of accounts, which essentially is just the classification for the different transactions that occurred during the year. And this will come in handy in future tabs as we build this spreadsheet. Now, just to get a couple basics across, we are told that this is a cash-only business, and so each of these transactions represents cash in or cash out. So when we build these journal entries, one of the line items will be this category, and the other line item will always be cash. This is the format that we are going to follow for our journal entries. We're going to have a journal entry number, the date, the cash line item, and the other category line item, the amount, and whether it's a debit or a credit. To start with the classifying these transactions into journal entries, I'm going to copy and paste all of the transactions into our journal entries tab. Now we don't need this middle column that included the project information, so we can go ahead and get rid of that, and that format's a bit better there. Now we need to get the cash line item associated with each transaction. To do this, I'm going to add the journal entry number, and then I'm going to copy and paste all of our transactions right underneath of the existing transactions. Next, I'm going to change the category to cash all the way down. By doing this, we're going to have a journal entry number 1 on this date with cash for $1,200. We will also have a journal entry number 1, same date, for the category for $1,200. If I sort based off journal entry number, you can see that we have the transaction and then cash, transaction and then cash. Cash always comes second, based off of the way that we formatted these journal entries here. And then just to clean this up a little bit, we'll make it consistent. There we have it. So next we need to decide whether each line item is a debit or a credit. Now, the way that this challenge is set up, we'll either have cash in or out. That means that cash can be a debit or a credit. We know that cash is an asset and increases with a debit. However, to simplify this challenge, I built it so that there is no reversals of other categories. So for example, we have a camera equipment, which is an asset account and will increase with a debit. I don't have any credits that will decrease the camera equipment account. So we know that those ones are always going to be stagnant. So first, let's think about cash. If our category is equal to cash, let's test the cell above to see if it is a debit or a credit. See if it's a debit. If the cell above it is a debit, then to balance this cash line item is going to have to be a credit. Otherwise, if the cell above is a credit, then it will have to be a debit. Hopefully that logic makes, oh, sorry about that. Missed a if statement right in there. All right, so now we know if it's cash, we check to see if it's a debit or a credit. This will make the cash line item balance. Next, we want to test if this is not cash. So if this is not cash, let's assume that we are looking for an asset or an expense account that will increase with a debit. So we will then do another if statement to see, and we're going to use an or statement as well to check those two conditions, if it's an asset or an expense. So we're going to check, let's see, to know if the category is an asset or an expense, we'll use an X lookup. We want to look up the category in our chart of accounts, and we want to return what type of account it is. And now we're looking for this to be either an asset or, I'm going to copy this, paste it, an expense. So if the category is an asset or an expense, we will be debiting. That's an increase. If it is not an asset or an expense, it's going to be a credit. And now we can close out our formula there. And just to make sure that this copies over well, let's go ahead and make these absolute references. Should have done that along the way. That's all right. There we go. And it's an absolute reference. And you can see as we drag and drop it, camera equipment, like I said, is an asset account. It's increasing, therefore it's a debit, which means to make it balance, this journal entry needs to be a credit. And again, we have an initial deposit is an income account, which increases with the credit, which means that cash, as it flows in, is increasing asset, is a debit. So you can see that this is working out quite well here. Now we have our journal entries. From there, the journal entries will need to flow into the financial statements on this tab. We see that they're already built here for us. We just need to add in the information. Here I chose to use a sum-ifs formula. This is a little bit easier than our triple nested if statement that we just did. So hopefully this one will be a little bit easier for us. So we'll start with the sum-ifs, and we want to sum the debits and then subtract out the credits. So I'm going to use two sum-ifs. So first we're going to sum the amount column from our journal entries, and we want this to be the criteria range is going to be our category, and our criteria is cash. So we're looking for, again, the amount of cash debits. So our second criteria is our debits and credits column, and we want to know if it's a debit. So go ahead and close that out. And so this gives us the sum of all cash debits, which is 17,300. But that's not what we're looking for. We also need to pull out the credits. So I'm just going to copy and paste this formula, change the debit to a credit, and we get the net amount of 69.27. Our references should be good because we reference the whole column, so we can go ahead and drag this all the way down. And you see that these are our balances in our asset accounts. Now, our accumulated depreciation account is a journal entry that we will have to make manually. In the challenge, Alex pointed out that she would like to take bonus depreciation for this year. And essentially, bonus depreciation allows a business to fully expense the cost of an asset in the year that it was acquired. For tax purposes, this is. And Alex wants to keep her books on a tax basis. So we're going to have to make this manual journal entry, and it's the expensing of assets, not cash, obviously, but these other assets. A total is $6,700. So let's go to our journal entries tab and make a new journal entry, number 93. We'll put it as of year end. We're going to put our depreciation expense, which is in our chart of accounts here, and accumulated depreciation. And it was 6,700 was the amount. Depreciation is an expense, which is going to increase with the debit. Accumulated depreciation is a contra asset, increase with the credit. And you see that it pulls the proper number right there, 6,700. Now, just for presentation purposes, I'm actually going to flip this. So we're looking for a credit there, and a debit there. And our total assets is our cash plus our camera equipment plus our office equipment minus our accumulated depreciation gives us 6927, which makes sense because it's how much cash is left in the business. Now we remember that assets and expenses increase with debits. So this formula should still work for our expenses. We just need to change this reference here to reference the proper account. Drag and drop. And there we have our total expenses. Income and equity accounts are going to increase with credits, the same as our accumulated depreciation. So I'm going to copy this formula, paste it. Again, just switch our lookup value to match those cells. And we will drag and drop there. Total income, total expenses, just a quick sum formula. Net income is gross income minus total expenses. So there we have net income for the year, $927 after all of our expenses, including our depreciation expense, which is a big one there. And finally, let's add this to our owner contributions as well. Instead of H6, we want it over here. And again, flip this one. Perfect. And we see that owner contributions was 6,000, which was from up here, 6,000. And since this is the first year of operations and Alex would like to reinvest her earnings into the business, our retained earnings is just going to be equal to the income that has been made to this point in the business, which is just going to be our net income amount over there. So we don't need a formula for that. We'll add these two together, and fortunately, it balances, as a good balance sheet should. So there's our financial statements. Next, Alex would like some help with some managerial reports. This will help her better understand the financial position of her business, as well as understand the cash flow that she's expecting from different projects. So we're going to start with our income. She wants to know how much income she has received for each project. So for this we're going to have two criteria in our formula. So I'm going to use two SUMIF formulas because there are two income types. There's the initial deposit and then the final payment. Those are her two categories of income. So I'm going to use the client data tab for this one. We're going to sum the amount column. The criteria range is going to be this project number. And our criteria 1 is our project number. Criteria range 2 is going to be the category, while criteria 2 is initial deposit. Let's see here. Perfect. Initial deposit. We see that this is the sum of project 1's initial deposits, but we also want to include the final payments. And we get our $1,000. And then just to do a quick double check on this formula, looks good. We'll drag and drop it, and we can see the income for each project. You see that there might be an issue with project 7 from a business standpoint because we haven't received the full amount. Next, we want to get the travel reimbursements, and this is essentially going to be equal to the amount of travel reimbursement per project. So again, we can just use a SUMIFs or sum range is the amount, criteria range is the category, category is travel reimbursement. We want the criteria range 2 to be the project, criteria 2 to be 1. And again, just a drag and drop. Sorry, I got that wrong. I forgot to make this cell absolute. That'll fix it. There we have it. So we can see project 4, travel reimbursement, 68. For travel reimbursement, 68. Now this is going to be the exact same for our travel expense. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it over here, change this from C1 to D1, and everything should mostly tie out. The only issues we may have is if we incurred an expense but we have not received the reimbursement yet. And this is exactly why Alex wants the report, so she could find these discrepancies. Project net income is simply going to be income plus travel reimbursements. This is cash that she has received minus the cash out for travel expense. Make that quick and easy. The next formula is for the date that the travel expense occurred. Now I'm going to paste in the solution formula here and hopefully just try to explain it. It's a little more complicated formula. This is an array formula where I needed two criteria in the XLOOKUP. I needed to look up the travel expense date by project. So this is essentially what that is doing. And there's an article linked in the suggestions and hints that will help explain this with a little bit more detail. But essentially this is just a multi-criteria XLOOKUP formula that gets us the proper dates. The next formula is essentially the same thing. just making sure that we look up the travel reimbursements by project. For this, I've put an if NA formula around it, just because I know that there are a couple that are missing. I don't want it to throw an error. I would just rather leave that blank, just as a personal preference. So again, these two formulas, a little bit more complicated. That article provides some help in better explaining them. The days to collect formula, I'm just going to use a days formula where I could pull the end date, which should be the reimbursement collected, and the start date of when it occurred. We should always be reimbursed after the expense incurs, and this simply just tells us how many days have passed between travel expense occurring and being reimbursed. We have a couple errors there, so I'm just going to throw an if error around our statement just to clean it up, just for the sake of presentation. Average collection period, let's just throw an average here. And make that a little more presentable. There we go. Final payment collected is just going to be the same as the travel reimbursement collected formula. And you can see that there are some days where the final payment has not been collected yet, which we know from our income. Our income was low here for project 7, and it's because we haven't received this final collection. For this final days to collect, I'm again just going to use an if error, and I want days, end date, start date. If it throws an error, we're going to change this to just say uncollected, a little more informative. And there we see, got a couple that are uncollected here. And another average formula. So this is super helpful for being, again, understanding the financial position by project. And so let's move into the Schedule C. So the Schedule C is the business reporting tax form for a sole proprietor, and so we'll fill this out just real briefly. Our gross sales, we're going to link all of these things to our financial statements. So our gross sales is going to be our initial deposit plus our final payment category. No returns and allowances. Line 3 is our we have no cost of goods sold. Gross profit is still going to be 10,000. Other income will be our travel reimbursements. And our gross income is just the sum of the two. Next, we have some expenses that we need to enter. So we have advertising expenses, which is in here. We have some depreciation expenses. We had some supplies on line 22 for office supplies. Travel, this would be our travel expenses. Deductible meals. For tax, we're going to assume that only half of these meals are deductible. as it says in our challenge example. So it's going to be our mills times 0.5. We also have some other expenses that are going to be equal to the sum of our expenses down here on line 48. So let's come down to line 48. I already added in software expense, equipment expense, and website expense from the financial statements. So we'll just add those in here real quickly. And the nice part about using these formulas is that as more journal entries are added into our journal entries tab, all of these things should be updating and essentially filling out the tax forms during the year. So we have 569 of other expenses, which we do see flowed up into our expense section. We were told not to worry about the cost of goods sold section, so we can just add up the sum of our expenses here. And our tentative profit or loss is going to be our gross income minus our expenses. And like that, we have our Schedule C filled out for Alex and ready to be included with her tax filing this season. And to finish off this project for our friend Alex, we're going to add some conditional formatting to the managerial report. Make it a little bit easier to read and so we can find the information that's the most important here. So first, let's look at our project net income. Let's conditional format this to highlight cells that are less than 1,000 with, the red looks good. This way we can look and quickly see, okay, there's some projects where we've not received as much as we would like. Additionally, let's do cells that are greater than 999 with our green, so we know that these projects are good. Next, we want to do our days to collect. And I am actually going to update this formula just so it matches the final, or the days to collect over here. So we have uncollected there. So let's highlight in red, same way we did over here, if it's equal to uncollected. So again, conditional formatting, equal to uncollected. I think I actually had to pull these out. There we go. And we'll apply that same formula right over here. Again, equal to uncollected. Perfect. Next, we want to add some icons next to our average collection period. The icon values were specified in the instructions. Anything that is 7 days or less is good. Collecting payment between 8 and 14 days is fair, and collecting payment 15 days and later is poor. So let's do an icon set, one that looks good here, but we need to update the parameters for this. So we'll come to our conditional formatting and manage our rules and edit this rule. We're going to change these to numbers. So when the value is, we're going to put this in reverse order actually. So when the value is greater than or equal to 15 days, it'll be red. When it's greater than or equal to 8 days, it's yellow. Anything less than that should be green. You see, because it lands in that 12 range, it's yellow. We can grab this format painter and drop it over here as well. So far it looks like Alex's days to collect on travel expenses and reimbursements It's fair. It could improve. But for the most part, collecting period between when the project is completed and when payment is due is at about 6 days, which is considered good in this instance. And lastly, we want to update the project number to show red if this project net income is less than 1,000. So essentially, we're going to do the same formatting here, but over here on this column. So I'm going to select everything, conditional formatting, highlight cells less than 1,000, but I need this to be equals to column E when column E is less than 1,000. But you see, I highlighted everything, so that's not exactly what I wanted. So we'll manage our rules and edit this rule. And we're going to change this to use a formula to determine which cells to format. So here we're going to lock it on column E, row 2 is less than 1,000. And apply it. And there we have it. Now this managerial report is a little bit more helpful. We can highlight important items. Once this payment is collected, right, it'll jump to 1,000, unhighlight, and this will hopefully be able to help Alex understand the financial side of her business a little bit more, so that she can combine her photography skills with her business proficiency as well. Now, I know that video was a little long, but hopefully being able to walk through some of those formulas and how you can use them will be helpful to you, not only for this challenge, but for any other challenges that you come across going forward. But we thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one.